Alright, welcome back to another video over here on SCS Combat, and today I'm going to be giving you my second prediction video for the boxing this weekend. One of the biggest fights we've seen in the last decade. Ring Magazine are posting fight of the century, so absolutely huge fight. Terence Crawford and Canelo Alvarez will clash for the undisputed super middleweight titles, 168 pounds. What a fight. Now, starting off, I'm going to give you my prediction for the co-main event just quickly because it's a very easy prediction for me. You might think it sounds biased, but I have Callum Walsh beating Fernando Vargas Jr. Watch footage. I think Callum Walsh is quicker. I think he's better. I think the place where he could get, caught, because obviously Vargas is a hard hitter, is if he walks in with his hands down, like he may have done a couple of times. But I think he's quicker. I think he's better. I think he hits hard enough to knock out Fernando Vargas Jr. as well, so that's my pick for that co-main event. Moving on, the main event, as we all know, Terence Crawford, Canelo Alvarez. Now, the biggest question going into this fight has been what is the size realistically. Terence Crawford's coming up from 147, he's had one fight at 154, and now he's coming up to 168. So depending on what way you look at it, he's coming up two, but he's either coming up three weight classes. The weight difference could be huge here, and it could play a huge part. I think the way fighters have looked before, you look at Deontay Wilder, this might not compare, but Deontay Wilder tried to put on weight in those Tyson Fury fights, and that did not end up well for him. He ended up getting tired quicker. For a fighter like Crawford, who's 38 and may have already been slowing down, adding on more weight on top of that there could make him slow down even more, and that's obviously not something he needs in this fight, because if you're a slower target, that means you're there more for Canelo to hit. Canelo is brilliant at catching people on the ropes. If they're too slow or they're not moving enough, Canelo will tag them, and Canelo is a hard hitter. People say he hasn't been knocking his last couple of opponents out, but he was knocking everyone down. But do you know what I mean? It's not like Canelo can't stun someone and he's pillow fisted. That's not what was happening. He just wasn't finishing them. Bud Crawford, we've all seen the skills, and this is where it kind of comes into play, the strategy that Crawford could bring, because we've seen people try to box Canelo. You see the likes of Billy Joe Saunders. Canelo's a very, very smart fighter, that although he probably doesn't get as much credit. A fighter like that with Billy Joe Saunders, where he tried to box Canelo and, be quick and move and stuff like that there, and Canelo just waited, took his time, and ended up eventually noticing a pattern, which was whenever he would throw a hook or throw something, Billy Joe Saunders would duck, so he throws that uppercut underneath and break Billy Joe Saunders' orbital bone. That fighters like Caleb Plant, and obviously these ones aren't on the level of Terence Crawford, but it's kind of an interesting perspective into what happens when Canelo fights a boxer. To be fair though, those fights were a couple of years ago when people would probably consider Canelo in his prime, or we don't know if he's still in his prime. So that kind of brings us to the biggest debate, because Terence Crawford's probably out of his prime as well. Let's be honest here, he's 38 and Canelo's been fighting pro from he's 15. So it kind of shows you, gives you perspective on where these two fighters are at in their careers. Probably not a long way to go for either of them before retirement. I gave my memory a quick refresh and I just watched both their last fights. So Terence Crawford defeated Israel Madrimov, becoming a world champion, WBA world champion I believe, 154 pound. Madrimov, great fighter. You kind of notice with Madrimov, it's sort of something you would see Canelo doing as well. At the start of the fight, Madrimov was walking forward, walking Terence Crawford down a bit, and obviously that's by option. The Crawford's just going on the back foot and probably picking up patterns himself, like I said Canelo tried to do. It became very interesting to that fight with Crawford and Madrimov, and I picked up a couple of things. Firstly, people might question what Terence Crawford's chin is going to be like in this fight. Wobbled before, obviously at lower weight classes, by Gamboa most notably. So you've kind of seen him tested a couple of times. He's never fully been dropped, I don't think, but Bud Crawford, undefeated, and has shown a great chin. And even in that last fight, Madrimov was a very hard hitter, and he showed a great chin in that fight as well. Now it does get really interesting because he's going up another two weight classes. Does that still hold up? He's been hurt before, he can be hurt again, and Canelo was very likely to do it. On the other hand, his power, Madrimov was the last person to go to a decision with him in a while. Does the power carry up? Maybe not as much, and the chin topic as well. On the other hand, for Canelo's had a seriously untouchable chin, and he's been wobbled by Cotto, and I'm pretty sure that's it. Other than that, you just see the fights. I mean, Gennady Golovkin is one of the hardest hitters there's been in boxing, and Canelo ate it overhand straight, clean as it can land, and he just took it straight on the chin, and didn't even bother him. He just shook his head back in response to one of the hardest punchers in the sport hitting him with the best punch he'd hit him with. I think if Terence Crawford's game plan in this fight is to come in and try and walk Canelo down, walk forward and knock him out, I think it's going to go badly for him. Maybe not badly, maybe it'll work at the start, but I think a fighter like Canelo will catch on and then eventually catch him. And there's obviously widespread belief now that Canelo doesn't hit hard because he hasn't been finishing people, and I just don't think it's true. Canelo can definitely hurt these people. Terence Crawford's no exception, and Terence Crawford maybe could hurt Canelo Alvarez as well, you know, if he catches him with a perfectly timed counter shot. It's the ones you don't see coming that hurt the most, so can he catch him off guard? Maybe. Before we get on to Canelo, I think otherwise a key thing that Crawford could use in this fight is his body work. He used a lot of that there in the Edger Majimov fight and used it to a very good extent, you know, landing some nice uppercuts in there, then switching them up to the head. You know, the body work was key for Crawford in that fight, and I think it could be key in this one as well. He done well in the championship rounds, kind of in the mid fight. He was getting caught a lot, which is obviously a serious concern. You can't be getting hit a lot by Canelo. Obviously, Canelo's not like a quick, flashy puncher anymore. He's more of a like just holding his feet and throwing power punches in. You know, the left hook, he loves that punch. Other punches, right hand, right hook. Believe he dropped John Ryder with the right hook. On the other hand, surprisingly watched back Canelo's last fight against William Skull. We all know that was probably, I mean, if that wasn't on the same weekend as Haney versus Ramirez and Garcia versus Romero, that would probably would have been called the worst fight ever. But I think even them two surpassed that. Canelo could not cut off William Skull. And obviously fighters like William Skull have great footwork and are hard to cut off, but the fact that Canelo couldn't, he just couldn't get there. He did land a few good shots. You know, Skull, ask anyone and they'll say it's hardest to knock someone out when they're not trying to fight. And William Skull was not trying to fight that night, unfortunately. So that's why it ended up being so bad. Canelo was trying to walk forward, walk him down, land some shots. And he did to a certain extent. But unfortunately, you know, just wasn't enough to get him out of there or hurt him or make it entertaining. I think quite interestingly from that fight, although Canelo is mostly known as a pressure fighter and he's walking forward, and he does show great defense, he was getting countered a lot by William Skull in between his punches. That's something that Terence Crawford would probably be looking to take advantage of in their fight, because that's his best chance to hit Canelo and to hit Canelo clean. You know, Canelo loads up on that big left hook and Crawford can just shoot a straight right hand in there. You know, try and catch him off guard, try and wobble him, try and stun him, try and land to the body. I struggle to see if, I don't think, like, if Crawford does go on the back foot and box, he won't do it like William Skull. He will try and land good punches, but I don't think I could see that. I don't think I can see Canelo being hit as easy. I think it could be interesting to see, especially in the later rounds, how much Terence Crawford slows down in this fight. If Terence Crawford comes up this weight at this age and doesn't slow down, that'll be insane. And Canelo does have very good defense. You see the head movement a lot. There's that one clip, I believe it was against Danny Jacobs, and it's that head movement just constantly wasn't being hit. Obviously we know Terence Crawford is a great defensive fighter as well, but is it good enough? This is my thing with Canelo, right? I think if someone brings the fight to Canelo and tries to win and he's actually in trouble and he knows he's losing, then I think he'll try harder. But I think these last couple of fights have not been an accurate representation of what Canelo can truly do to at the best of his abilities. Fighters like Berlanga, Jaime Munguia, John Ryder even, I mean, some of the stuff was just, those opponents are nowhere near the level of Canelo Alvarez, let's be honest here. Edgar Berlanga got outboxed and then Canelo just dropped him. It feels weird that Canelo can't finish these people. I don't even feel like he tries to sometimes. Even the Jaime Munguia fight, it's like concerning. It's like, how do you not get him out of there? Obviously, another thing that can be brought into this is the fact that Terence Crawford's a switch hitter. Very good skill to have, can set anyone off. I do find it interesting, but the main thing here that I could see happening is Terence Crawford could get caught. I think the chances of that are higher, especially at that last fight. Canelo mightn't throw flashy combinations anymore or like throw really quick shots. There might just be single rooted combinations that are like harder, maybe not as quick, but they're more powerful. And they go from body to head and head to body, and I think that's something that could obviously potentially catch Terence Crawford. I think, in my opinion, seeing fighters like Roy Jones Jr., even say, and maybe Andre Ward at the same time, that the weight mightn't be as much of a factor in this fight, and I don't really think that, to be honest. I think the weight could be a definite big factor in this fight. We've seen the photos of Terence Crawford, and he's huge. He's put on a lot of weight, and he's built himself up well, to be fair. Everyone else talks when other fighters put muscle on, that like they're all like, oh, but sure, that could slow him down, you know. Muscle mass slows people down, especially carrying it more, carrying at a higher weight class. Even arguably pound for pound, the greatest fighter to ever live in Sugar Ray Robinson. You know, he got too exhausted in the end, fighting at 175 pound whenever he went too far up in weight classes. And obviously, I'm pretty sure the heat in that day was ridiculous, and that's what happened there. It does show that weight takes an effect on these fighters, no matter how great they are. I think the weight will be a fact. As much as I mentioned the bodywork of Terence Crawford, I think Canelo Alvarez is obviously known as a heavy body puncher as well. Liam Smith, you know, you look at that fight. Canelo Alvarez has caused severe problems to fighters with bodywork. The Amir Khan fight, for example, Amir Khan come up weight classes to fight Canelo, and Canelo just sparked him out cold. Now, obviously, Amir Khan's not known for having the best chin in the world. Terence Crawford definitely has a better chin than Amir Khan. These have to be factors. Like, I don't see how these aren't playing into predictions. I think people just throw the weight aside, and I do believe that the weight is huge in this fight. Overall, right, it's the weight advantage for Canelo. Even though he mightn't be the bigger fighter, it's the weight advantage for Canelo. It's probably the power advantage for Canelo, let's be honest. Coming up the weight classes as much as Bud has, your power usually decreases. We've seen fighters like Manny Pacquiao didn't, so obviously it's not 100% guaranteed, but, you know, benefit of the doubt, Canelo probably has the power advantage. The body work of Canelo and the chin of Canelo, defense of Canelo as well. The competition level of Canelo, the fact that he's been fighting bigger fighters than him, bigger people than him already. Even if Terence Crawford's 168, but he's bigger, so was Berlanga, so was Jaime Munguia. You know, Canelo's fought taller people with bigger reach advantages, and he just sorts them out anyways. And obviously we've seen him over 175 against Kovalev and stuff like that, and Bivol, who obviously beat him. But on the other hand, Terence Crawford, you have the speed, hopefully, for him, the sharpness, hopefully, in his favour. But obviously, like I'm saying, the weight can seriously affect these things. Defense, the footwork is another thing, and the body work as well for Terence Crawford. Oh yeah, and activity for Canelo. Canelo has fought so many more times than Terence Crawford has over the past couple of years. Terence Crawford's been fighting once a year. Canelo's been fighting at least twice a year. So it kind of gives you perspective. If Bud was going to be rusty anyways, like, this is the thing, Bud could already be slow because of the weight, and he could be even more slow from ring rust because he hasn't fought from the Madrigal fight. And you kind of see now where I'm saying the weight and all these things could add up to affect Terence Crawford more than they could to affect Canelo Alvarez. Obviously, the thing that concerns me with Canelo Alvarez is the competition level. You know, how does a fighter like William Skull, Edgar Berlanga, Jaime Munguia, their skill levels do not compare in the slightest to Terence Crawford, but then neither does Israel Madrimov to Canelo Alvarez, even though he was more of a challenge than the people Canelo fought. My official prediction, who I have winning this fight, and who I think will go into superstardom of greatness, I'm going to pick Canelo Alvarez. You obviously see my reasonings earlier in this video, but I just do think the weight, I think his power as well could cause Crawford some serious trouble. I think he'll definitely lose a couple of rounds in there. You know, he might even lose the fight starting off, and he gets worked into it more, and then I think eventually he could end up winning on decision, by even possibly by dropping Crawford multiple times, or maybe not multiple times, but dropping him, you know, and bringing that in his favour. I think it'll be a close fight. I think it'll be a tough fight for both men, but I do see Canelo Alvarez taking this one and defending his undisputed super middleweight titles. That's going to be my pick, Canelo Alvarez. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Let me know who you think is going to win, because this one's interesting. You know, this is very split. This is 50-50. Do you think Canelo's too big? Do you think he'll get it done? Do you think Terence Crawford's too quick and too good of a boxer? And do you think he'll get it done? Let me know down below in the comments. That's going to be all for today. Like, subscribe, follow Instagram, Twitter, TikTok for more, and watch the Crocker Donovan prediction as well.